Hey there, and welcome to the Podcast Editors Mastermind, the We Started a Couple Minutes Late edition this time. We're so glad that you are here. I can't wait to talk to Virginia. We'll do introductions in just a second. But I did want to mention right at the outset, we're in the middle of a series where we're talking about first clients, because one of the things we hear consistently is, how do I find clients? How do I find my first client? How do I get started? And we don't know. So we want to reach out to the members in our community. We've shared our experiences. We want to hear theirs as well. And so that's what this is all about. Before we get started, I'm Brian Ensminger. You can find me at toptieraudio.com. And on one of these sides is Jennifer.
Jennifer Longworth of bourbonbarrelpodcasting.com.
And our guest today is Virginia Elder. She's actually somebody that I really kind of look up to in the podcasting and podcast manager and editor space. I know that she has a background in project management, client services, some stuff like that. She's been doing this for a few years. And in my view, looking from the outside, it looks like she knows who her ideal client is, where to find them, what they want, and how to connect with them. And to me, that is just super cool. You can find her at podcastabundance.com, which I will put on the screen for those that have us live, so you can see that. And, just want to mention that she started somewhere, just like all of us, right? She had a first client, so we're here to talk about that. Virginia, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. You make me sound so, I don't know, authoritative.
Because you are.
In the intro. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and Steve says, here we go. Yeah, we're looking forward to this. If you're joining us live, definitely feel free to use the chat, ask your questions, add your comments, because we want to make sure that this show is valuable for you. We're here to learn too, but we want to make sure it's great for you. So, Virginia, as we get started, we've been talking to the last few people about sort of what kicked off their love for podcast editing and podcasting. But for you, I'd kind of like to hear a little bit about what you were doing prior to getting involved in podcast editing.
Yeah. Okay, let's see. Around the time we were going to start a family, I wanted to use my degree, which is in accounting. So I got a job at a local sales tax audit firm. As exciting as that sounds, I was excited about it because I'm a numbers dork. So yeah, I would sit there and look at invoices and spreadsheets, and I knew my way around Access really well. And that kind of started my love for podcasting, because I could sit there and be plugged in and listen all day, every day, while I was just plugging away, basically like data entry style work. So I could just listen and fall in love with these hosts. And I didn't fully understand what podcasting was at the time, but I knew I could listen and kind of follow along and hear these people's stories. And I'm kind of a big personal development nerd, so that was a lot of the stuff that I would listen to. And yeah, that was kind of the beginning of the journey. I never thought that I would be where I am now at that time. So yeah, just plugging away at the computer during the day job and just being plugged in. That started the love affair here.
Yeah. So, I mean, accounting to podcast editor, do you call yourself a manager, a producer? What do you call yourself at this point?
All the things, right?
Nice.
Podcast manager has been the way that I introduce myself, and I'm really working on that language because I really want to step into that role as a business owner. Yes, we will still manage podcasts, but I'm really trying to remove myself from the day-to-day, plugging and editing myself and step into that business owner role. So I'm trying to start to introduce myself that I own a podcast management business.
Ooh,
yeah, which is quite the transition in itself, right? I mean,
yeah,
I haven't gotten there yet. I'm still clearly an editor and a little bit of a manager, right? So that's impressive, because you've been doing this. I think you said 2019, I think, is when you got started with this.
Right.
So
in 2018, I switched audit firms thinking that would make me happy, when I was really just feeling that pull of I wanted to be home with my kids. It was, this massive pull on my heartstrings every day when I had to drop them off at daycare or anything else. And I really wanted to be home with them. And I just knew there had to be a way. I see people walking their dog in the middle of the day. What do they do?
Right.
And that was really the culprit of the whole shift.
So how did you start that transition? You mentioned that you wanted to be home with your kids.
Mhm.
What headed you down this path?
Yeah. Around that same time, our personal finances kind of hit the fan, and which is just it's a wild story, and I won't get into the whole thing, but you're thinking, okay, like two people, my husband's a teacher, we both have incomes. Like, why are we having financial issues? And we just really were mismanaging our money. And as much as I knew about business finances and audit rules and taxes, we were mismanaging our personal finances. So those were the
Mhm.
shows that I was listening to all
Mm.
day, was learning, and I'd come home and implement something that I learned. So within a certain period, we made some really strong headway on our personal finances. We paid off a lot of debt in a short period of time. And I thought, hey, all these people are sharing with me their personal finance journey and teaching me what to
Mm.
do and how to do it. Like, I could help other moms that are in the same situation. Because there was also this thing that I noticed at that time. Most of the podcasters I was listening to in the personal finance space were men.
Yeah.
Right.
And I thought, where's the lady? Where's the mom? Where's the working mom that's doing this? And so I wanted to be her, and I launched my own show.
Nice. What was it called?
That is called Reaching Abundance. You can still find it out there.
Okay.
I have not published an episode since 2021. And that even was like a last ditch effort of like me trying to keep up with it while having podcast clients. So I did have to let that go.
So where was the jump from podcast host to podcast editor?
Hmm. So around that time, of course, I'm thinking I've got to make a transition. I'm not
Mhm.
happy in the workplace. I've got to find a way to be at home. I want to continue sharing about this personal journey. So initially, I made the jump to be a personal finance coach, and I went ahead and left the workplace. Was going to go all in on this personal finance coaching thing, and very quickly was like, it's kind of hard to find clients here. So, so I actually put myself on Upwork as a podcast editor. And this is just crazy how this worked out. I saw a listing, and it happened to be from a financial advisor. And I reached out to him and said, hey, I love personal finance podcasts. I really would like to do your show. And he saw my Upwork profile, and we kind of started chatting back and forth. And the real connection point, I think, why we ended up having a relationship and doing business together was that personal finance connection. We immediately started talking about like, oh, who do you follow and who do you know and what show do you listen to and have you ever been to FinCon, and just all of those little what could be connection points, and just having that conversation. He was like, I just need some help. I just want to do a show. I just want some help. You seem cool. Let's do this. But I don't think without all of those little connection points that would have worked so well.
So I don't know how Upwork works. Did he find you and you find him?
Kind of both. I posted a profile, and it's been a long time since I've been on that platform. At the time, I went ahead and created a profile and put some of my own episodes up so that people could listen to those samples. But at the same time, I was looking through listings of people hoping to
Looking.
find those professionals. Yeah.
Okay.
So it was kind of both, because he was able to see my profile, but I did initiate and respond to his listing.
Okay.
So one thing that's kind of sitting in the back of my mind is a couple of the people that we've talked to, their first client experience wasn't super great. They called it maybe their beta client, if you will. This client, it sounds like you had a bit of a connection, but I'm wondering, what was your first experience with this person as your client?
Yeah. I was really transparent with him that, okay, I have my show. I've come up with some pricing around this. This is going to have to be flexible, because I'm new at this. And he was like, that's great. I trust you're going to do the best you can, the right thing, all of that. Um, for one, maybe he was just a super trusting person, but for two, I think those connection points really mattered. And we were able to share right away different things that we both felt that trust mutually. Um, but yeah, he was very flexible with me. We did go through a couple of price increases during the time that he actually ended up producing 68 episodes with me. So it was
Nice.
over a year relationship. And some of those episodes I ended up being on his show because his guest canceled last minute and he wanted me on. And I was like, are you sure?
Aw.
But yeah, it ended up well. Everything everything was almost like an experiment for him and for me. It was like, well, do you want to start with Google Drive? And then I had heard from Steve to use Dropbox. Okay, like let me switch over to Dropbox. Are you okay with that? Yes, cool. Whatever you need, right? And so we had lots of conversations about, what do you think about this? What do you want here? How do you think we should do this? Okay, this is getting a little tight. I need to raise my prices. And he was very easy to communicate throughout the relationship.
Wow, that's like the best first time story I think I've ever heard.
It was.
Steve's is right up there. I mean, his was also, I think, a really good experience, but that is
Yeah.
pretty incredible. I'm not
I'm
really
s-
sure where to go from there. Jennifer, did you
I
have any
do.
thoughts? Oh, perfect.
Yeah.
Ah,
Yeah. So we found the first one on Upwork. Where'd you
Mhm.
find your next one? How'd you keep going?
Yeah, that story I think is even better and more clear for other editors to be able to implement because um, let's see, I had gone to FinCon in 2017 as a fan of these personal finance podcasts, right? Um, in 2019, having launched my show, I was going, right? Because now I'm one of them. Now I can go to this conference and say, I'm a podcaster. I'm just like y'all. Let's make relationships, right? At that conference, I meet two other financial advisors. Oh, you have a show? Oh, you're doing a show for another financial advisor? Oh, you should do our show. Okay, okay. Sure. And again, you know, I didn't have an email list. I didn't necessarily have a great website. I don't even remember if I had a podcast editing website at that point. I think I still just had like the personal finance coaching site. I didn't have the infrastructure. Everything was very much kind of by the seat of my pants. And I knew though that you could do it that way as long as you were communicating very clearly, being very transparent, and um, putting those foundational pieces in place as soon as you recognize that they're needed. So, yes, it was rocky. And yes, there were times where, I didn't know what to do if somebody didn't send me out the file on time.
Mm-hmm.
And okay, well, you said you wanted to have your episodes go live every Wednesday, but it's Monday. I'm feeling kind of pressured. And I didn't know how to have that conversation. So everything was a test and a trial. But all of these people, I think, not all of them, but so it was two advisors that were on one show together, and then the one that I found on Upwork. So two shows,
Two shows.
three clients, kind of in a
okay.
way. Everybody was very open and communicative, and we would just talk through things like, okay, what's going on here? What do you want to do? How do you feel about this? And yeah, it was a lot of work just to get those foundational pieces in place. Once I discovered, oh, we need like a standard file naming system so that everyone knows what they're looking for. Just simple things like that we think are simple now, right? But
Mm-hmm.
starting out, it wasn't that simple.
Systems, putting the right systems in place, right?
Yes.
I had something and then it magically disappeared. So instead, we're going to go back to Steve's comment. Yes, because I think he was talking about going to FinCon to find
Mhm.
your ideal client,
Mhm.
and that one of the things that kind of stood out to me as you were sharing, I did finally remember what I was thinking about. You mentioned like you're not even sure if you had a proper website, no email list, all that kind of stuff.
Mm-mm.
One of the shows I edit, I remember her saying that for the people that she does a coaching thing for businesses, for the people she's training when they start out, like
Yeah.
she's not all about the list or anything. She says, go have 100 coffee chats, virtual
Mhm.
or in person, and build your business that way. Have you found a difference in the value between things like the online marketing that I see you doing, because I see it and it's
Mhm.
great. It's
Aw.
it's really, really great.
Thank
And that in-person stuff.
I think in person is always stronger. The online marketing helps me, and I think you're talking about social media,
Mostly, yeah.
because that's pretty much the marketing that I do. So the social media pieces help, and maybe someone, maybe you're like, for example, in the FinCon community. So we're all connecting and we're all following each other anyways and commenting and liking. But even if I haven't met them, but we've connected on social media, and then like say next week I'm going to be there, s- we will have that connection like, oh, I follow you. Oh, I follow you too. Okay, cool. And we already feel like we know each other. And then we're able to make that personal connection while we're there. Those are the moments where you can walk away, follow up with them in a week, and if they are someone who's been thinking about doing a show, it really might happen with you.
Yeah,
So
you said like something that follow
Mhm.
up. Yeah, what does that look like? I don't
Yeah.
know what this
What
means.
is follow-up? Yeah. So just in full transparency, I mean, we are just implementing, like a very much more clear system to follow up with people because in the past, I've dropped the ball as well. I didn't have a clear system. And, you start Googling CRMs and how to keep track, like it just gets crazy. So now at this point we're implementing a system where we're putting in people's names and okay, follow up with this person in a week or whatever. Initially, maybe it's just that we do connect on social media and we shoot a quick message like, hey, it was great to see you at this event, or it was great to see you online, or hey, I watched your episode on the Podcast Editors Mastermind, whatever it is. Find a connection point to message them about instead of just, hey, do you want to start a podcast? Like that's never going to work. So, um, finding that connection point, and then if you do, and when you do meet that person, whether it's in like maybe an online networking thing or in an in-person conference, because I realize there's people all over the world that may not have that in-person networking opportunity. So at that point, don't be afraid to send them an email and say like, hey, it was great to connect with you. Yeah, probably try to pick a few things that were mentioned or that you noticed about them. Check out their website. Like do 3 minutes of research on them. Comment about like, oh hey, I see you're going to such and such dance studio. I tried the one that's local to me. What do you think? That was a comment that I made to somebody recently, just trying to find that connection. But yeah, so follow up can look like a social media message or an email, and then try to establish a system that notifies you, hey, it's been a week since you sent that message. Have you heard back from them? Do we need to send a follow up? So I'm still honing that process as well.
So do you have a CRM or are you just a spreadsheet person or what are you using?
We have been using spreadsheets, and what that looked like was a different spreadsheet for every event or networking thing, online or in person, and it was just getting wild. And you you don't get a notification from a spreadsheet, right? Like, oh, it's been 2 weeks since you talked to this person. There's no notifications there. We use Asana to manage our client work. So, in doing some research, since I already pay for Asana, I really didn't want to pay another multiple $100, and especially not a few $100s a month on a CRM. And that was the price point I was finding.
Hmm.
So we actually found a template inside Asana called Sales Pipeline, and you can customize it and adjust it, which we did. But that's basically what it is. Like instead of a task in Asana, it's someone's name. And you can, create columns and say, like, well, I met them at FinCon and I met them at PodFest or Podcast Movement, wherever you met these people. You can make notes and put their email in there and create a system to follow up. So that's what we're working on right now.
So since FinCon's coming up, what, next week or so, or
Mhm.
pretty darn soon,
Yeah.
what's your strategy going into FinCon and other in-person conferences? I mean, what's your arsenal? What do you bring?
I've got those flyers ready to whip out. No, I'm just kidding. So lately, my strategy, if you want to call it that, has been just to get more involved. I am working the podcast recording tables. You and I did that together, Jennifer, at
Yeah.
Podcast Movement.
Yep.
So leaning into that a little bit more. Steve has been awesome as far as connecting those opportunities. I have a set of 4 pieces of equipment. So that was a great opportunity for me to get in touch with FinCon, because they're going to have recording tables anyways, and say, like, hey, let me be one of the people that supplies the equipment.
Nice.
And so that way, that's a little bit of a touch point there. And then getting speaking opportunities, I'm leaning into that. Anything that I can share that might help podcasters get started, that would be the ideal audience to speak to. There are some other peripheral groups, like there's a book group that I'm part of, and we're going to have lunch together. I don't know everyone in the book group yet, but we're going to have lunch and we're all attending FinCon. Who knows who might want to start a podcast? So it's just trying to be involved in the conference, but then also in peripheral groups of the conference so that you're able to make those connections with people. I hope that helps.
Yeah. Well, I have a conference that I've never been to coming up next week. So I'm like,
Yeah.
all right, let's see. Any tips? Well, not
Yeah.
yet. It's the first time going. It's my first time going. So I'm kind of like, I don't even know how to get involved yet. And it's
Mhm.
not a podcast or media conference. It's outside. So yeah,
Mhm.
anyway, just looking for
that-
extra tips.
Yeah, I think that's the piece that we're all missing. Like, honestly, I don't really get clients from PodFest or Podcast Movement. That is more of, hey, I'm involved in the industry. I'm in this space.
Mhm.
And to have people like recognize, oh, you spoke. Okay, well, yeah, you spoke too. Okay, we're both speakers. Like, let's connect. What's your business? Maybe that opportunity is more about like parallel partnerships as service providers,
Yeah.
where I'm able to refer someone, or maybe the services I don't offer aren't, or the services I offer are not, for whatever reason, what someone's looking for. Okay, maybe they are over here, so I can refer those. But I think the conferences that are maybe not directly about podcasting, like FinCon, it's a financial creators conference. It's not a podcasting conference. They're creators. And they happen to talk about personal finance. So, yeah, I think those different types of conferences might really be key. I think that's a really smart move because you're connecting on a different level.
Yeah.
They aren't going to have their guard up about like, oh, the service provider is trying to get my business, So, yeah.
I did want to jump in and just mention Steve left a comment on Facebook, the book club. That's a great idea. And I
Yeah.
think he's the one that I've heard kind of banging the drum of go to non-podcasting conferences. This is like taking that to the next level,
Absolutely.
going to almost a niche within a niche within I'm about to go Inception. So we're going to step off of that one.
Well, and I'll say that, even at that conference in 2019, I talked to Steve like for the first time and was like, And I don't know if he remembers the conversation, but I kind of sheepishly walked up to him and was like, I know you, but I know you don't know me. Just like that conversation. And he was so gracious about it. And of course, down the road, I ended up taking an editing course from him and got involved with the academy and different pieces. He's really played a huge part in me finding my footing.
Yes. Agreed. Steve's great. He's a big part. And he says that he totally remembers that moment because that's who Steve is. I would
Yeah.
probably forget. Steve remembers. That's because he's the man.
Yes.
One of the things I've been kind of wondering
Mhm.
is I've seen on Facebook recently, you've posted a few what I'll call provocative questions for business owners.
Mhm.
And I think they apply very much to me as a business owner.
Cool.
One of them was around like, what percentage do you spend on marketing spend? Like, how do you think about that? So I want to just ask you, like, how do you approach planning for your marketing as part of your budget?
Yeah. That is also why I've posted those questions because
it's research?
Yeah, a little bit. It's twofold. I am viewing podcasting as a marketing arm for small business owners. And that's generally my target client. They own a small business. They've already been making sales, right? They already have this established and they're curious about establishing an online presence, but they just maybe don't know which direction we're going to go in. So, as a business owner, if you're looking at that, okay, how much should you spend on marketing? Well, Small Business Association, I found out, says 7%. But then there's other people out there that are saying like, 10%, 20%. Like it really, there's a big range. I think the issue comes up when, let's say, like a business consultant may look at things and say, okay, well, you're struggling, but you're not spending more than 1% on your marketing. And it's this balance, right? Of, okay, you spend some on marketing. If it works well, then you have more business. So it's trying to even out those wings of the plane and figure out what's the balance here. It's going to be different for every business. But as I'm having conversations about starting a podcast, that marketing budget is coming into play. And
Right.
so it's a little bit for me as I look at 2024 and marketing and going to these conferences and all of that. But it's also, like you said, perfect for anyone who owns a business to just think like, well, how much do I spend? And if a podcast is part of your marketing strategy, how much of that 7% does that podcast production take up? So then it becomes a question of what is the size of business that someone may own that can reasonably afford full service production management, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
So then it's kind of like narrowing down who my target client is because it just, if they want a weekly show and social media and all these things, that can get to be a pretty big bill. So it's a certain level of revenue that someone would be at to be able to afford all of those things under my services. So there's a lot of thoughts going on around those
Yeah.
questions.
And I appreciate you sharing part of, and I guess it's a little bit, I'll just preface this by saying, I don't want to, like, if you've got some kind of proprietary stuff or IP that you need to keep private, like, just tell me to shut up and stop being stupid. But I'm wondering, like, have you gotten any thoughts or any indications around what that appropriate amount would be? So if I think about like a $1 million business,
Mhm.
7% of that would be $70,000 a year.
Mhm.
That can absolutely support a podcast producer.
Absolutely.
But like, what percentage would they be willing to spend on that? Is that like 1% of their 7%? Do you have any rubrics around that yet?
Not yet around that. I'm usually more of looking at this as if someone comments and is like, I'm not spending anything. Okay, well, hopefully my questions are making them think about like, well, maybe I should be spending
Mm.
something, right?
Mhm.
What is some
Mhm.
marketing that I could do on a tight budget and then work up from there? Or if someone comments and they're like, I spend way more than that, I can kind of look and see and find their brand, find their website, kind of see who they are, what kind of services are they selling, are there prices on their website, and I can get an idea of what the back end of their business might look like. Okay, if you're spending way more way more than that on marketing, is that marketing working? It gives me the opportunity to say, hey, okay, you're spending, you commented and you're spending 15%, let's say, on marketing. What are you doing and how's it working for you?
Mhm.
And of course, I would love for that to turn into a podcast question, but it's also just great business research. What is working for you as a business owner?
Yeah.
Tell me, share.
Yeah.
so it will help me as far as the client, like you said, like target client conversation,
Mhm.
but then it also helps as a business owner. So no, none of this is proprietary.
Have you ever been in that conversation with somebody about starting a show and you say, hey, I don't think it's time for you to start a show? Like, do you ever push anybody off and say, no, it's not for you?
I have been waiting some of those conversations, and that has come up where it's a really small business and they're just starting out. Their revenue isn't even over 50 grand for, the year, and we're talking about US. Um, I'm going to be able to frankly tell them, hey, like my rate is this much per month for a weekly show that's 20 minutes long. You know, I don't think this is where you want to put your money until you are a little bit further down the road. Maybe we could look at one YouTube video a month, or like let's adjust the strategy a little bit, but you're not ready for a weekly show. Unless you're going to DIY it, there's an option there.
Yeah.
So yeah, I want to be cognizant of the business phase that they're in and their revenue at that point and their marketing budget, and kind of with guidelines, what it kind of should be at that point, and help them stay within those parameters so that when they start a podcast, it's sustainable in all ways, right? Especially financially, because that's how we'll both win.
Yeah, that's great. Jennifer?
So you've thrown around a few different things like podcast manager and how you want to introduce yourself to that. And so I want to know what that looks like now beyond just being a podcast editor, which is what I am. I don't get into the other stuff. So what is a podcast manager? How do you define that? What do you do?
So my role as a podcast manager has been kind of like the orchestrator of all the things. And slowly but surely, since 2019, I've established a small team. So there's a blog writer, there's a couple editors, there are a graphics designer, a show notes writer. There's all these different pieces. So when I receive a show, everybody's agreement's different. Not everyone gets the exact same 5 items or whatever it is. So then I'm delegating out and then being the final like quality control person when all those completed pieces are ready. And then my online business manager and one of us will schedule those things to their podcast host or their YouTube channel, their social media account, whatever that looks like. So kind of being the orchestrator and the coordinator of all of the moving parts, and doing less of the hands-on editing and less during the quality control process. And I'm like, oh, that needs to be cut. And I'll do a few little things there.
So what's it like working with subcontractors or team members, however you look at them?
Again, I feel like I got really lucky. Some of these people have been with me since, I want to say 2021, but it might have been 2020. And they've been very consistent throughout the process. That doesn't mean that I haven't had issues with other contractors. So, anytime I'm looking for help, I will have them fill out a questionnaire. I'll interview a few of those people, and then the top ones, maybe it's 1, 2, or 3, I will give them a test project. And that's a paid project. Sometimes, if I'm not happy for the work or happy with the work, then we might, have a conversation about, okay, these are the edits I'm looking for. I'm hearing this and this. Do you hear that? Just kind of testing the level and the communication of what can be done. Like maybe they didn't understand the edits that I wanted, So then we'll go over that. We can tell pretty quickly if they want to do that work or if we're kind of done here. Then we'll take the editors, I would say, who kind of passed that test and give them more work. We have some seniority. There are certain editors that I want to fill their plate because they've been with me the longest and they're been the most reliable. So I want to fill their plate first.
Mm-hmm.
And then, kind of everything trickles down from there. I think the biggest shift with contractors has been going from, in the beginning, we only used email back and forth all the ways, communicating, sharing files. It was fine for me because I'm a crazy zero inbox person with folders and all that stuff. I'm really obsessively organized. But I could tell that sometimes for them, the emails would get lost. So implementing Asana was a big deal. Moving over to Dropbox, where we could share certain files and folders in someone's specific folder so that they know that that's their work. That was a great move. And then using Slack for quick communication was also a great move. So now we don't even email that often. And I think it's a lot cleaner. Now my emails are back and forth with clients or networking groups, or it's stuff that I am involved in that the contractors aren't necessarily involved in.
One thing that kind of piqued my interest, you were sharing that you try to fill certain people's plates, which I get.
Mm-hmm.
So do you assign shows to an editor, or do you just this is your show every time there's a new episode, it's yours, or is it based on when the workload comes in and who has open space on their plate?
We have tried to assign a show to a person. I pulled back from that because everybody has stuff that goes on in their life. And if, that person isn't available that week, or they're traveling, or I don't know, anything that's going on, I need a different editor to be able to handle that show. So we initially started out thinking, okay, this is this person's show, but now it's just a per episode basis, who's full, and everybody has access to the range of intros for all of our clients and outros for all of our clients, and we just make sure that they have the correct pieces for that episode. It's really based on who's available, and we'll do periodic check-ins, hey, mid-October here, let's look forward into the rest of the quarter that we're in. Who has travel coming up? What's going on? Are there any weeks where you don't want work assigned with a deadline? And we'll try to keep that communication open. And all that's done via Slack now.
Nice.
Yeah.
How many clients are you serving right now with your team?
Right now, only 11.
Okay.
I would like a few more, so that's why I say it that way. And of course, the last quarter of the year, I think the push will be hey, if you didn't launch a show, but you had it on your 2023 goals, let's do this. Let's get it going. And then, of course, some people are already looking into the new year, especially larger companies. So if we can start talking about those Q1, Q2 launches, I think that's going to be really beneficial.
Cool.
Yeah.
Anything else, Jennifer?
Not yet. Pop up
Okay.
Steve's comment though.
Only 11.
Only 11. He's jabbing me there.
Well, I mean, he could definitely be jabbing me because I'm actually down. I've never had 11, but I'm actually down a bit this year.
But-
Shows roll off, people stop podcasting, stuff happens.
And that's why I say it that way as well. We did have more last year, and we were really feeling like we were in a growth phase, and then a few dropped off, and then like a few months later a couple dropped off, and I was like, oh my god, what's happening? So that's why I say only 11. And when I say that, keep in mind, not everyone has a full-fledged podcast. Maybe some clients are doing a once a month episode.
Right.
Some clients are not doing a podcast, but they're doing something on their YouTube channel, or maybe we're providing them blog posts and social media. So we have this wide range of options that people can choose, and not everyone is like a weekly 30-minute show, with an interview.
Right.
So, because that would be much more consistent income.
Definitely. Steven says, shows end.
Shows end.
And Steve says 11's a lot when you're doing all the things, and I would agree.
Yes, but remember, I do have 5 really reliable contractors that are helping me. So that is a big piece of why I've been able to say only 11. Brian, I mean, if you're handling the majority of the work yourself, then like the limit's going to be a little lower.
Yeah, it's actually gotten to the point this year where it's almost all of the work is me. I did have a couple of contractors, but as shows drop off, I have 2 categories of expenses, right? You've got fixed expenses that happen every time, and you have variable. And unfortunately, the contractors end up being a variable expense. And so as much as I liked having them, and to be honest, one of the shows that rolled off was the show that contractor worked on. So it was a very clean cut. It wasn't like I was going, hey, I got to take this work over. It's the work you've been doing is gone because that show isn't being produced.
Yeah.
However, it's still like, I'm still looking at this going, at what point do I need to consider what my fixed expenses look like? And of course, I'm always looking at that. But there's a certain amount of overhead, like Google Drive and Dropbox don't care that you have a client that dropped off. They're still going to want their money. Same thing with StreamYard, or like all the services that you use. How do you think through the process of what should stay and what should go when it's belt tightening time?
Yeah. So it's funny that you mentioned that, because I got my Asana bill just today, and I was I wasn't ready for that. but yeah, those things come up. I do have a group that does bookkeeping work for me. So I will look at, okay, what are the software expenses that I had last year? And I can look at that list and see the values and see what time in the year those expenses hit. And okay, what are we using? What is a software that can do double duty when we're tight? Maybe we move everybody to Drive, because that's something that I kind of have to have anyways, just for my stuff. So, maybe Dropbox will get cut. Like, it just depends on your client needs and like what you need in your toolbox to be able to produce their, promised pieces, right? So Canva feels like a necessity to me. I'm trying to think what else. Anytime. So I love, and this is just kind of like a financial thing, I love having a Capital One card, because you can just like lock your card and then no charges can go through. So guess what happens when you get a software charge that you didn't expect? They email you because they couldn't charge your card. And it gives you that moment to go, oh, should I have canceled that? Do I need this? What's going on? If you didn't notice, right? Or if you didn't go over that expenses list in time, or if you didn't realize that was going to hit this month. So I love that. It's kind of that reminder of like, hey, this charge couldn't go through. Do you still want this software? And then, if if it's not 100% necessary during, like you said, belt tightening time. I like that.
Yeah, I say that in the time when I should be tightening my belt, but at the same time, on a personal level, it's kind of going the opposite direction, right?
Mhm. I mean, that's how we're all getting older. Nobody's getting younger here.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I want to make sure that this is valuable to any editors listening. So is there anything else that you feel like maybe you wanted to ask or that we should dive into that I skipped maybe in my story or anything like that?
Nothing for me. If somebody has something from the audience, of course, we'd love to hear from those comments. Love having you be part of the conversation.
Mm.
I guess
We-
the only other thing would be like, what, when was the shift, or what was the mindset that went from I'm doing all the things to I want to be a business owner?
Okay. That has been extremely gradual.
Okay.
So in 2019 and 2020, I was the business sole operator, manager, coordinator, everything. And I started to think about, okay, I can't really take on any more clients. This is too busy. And I started this and quit my day job and came home so that I could be with my kids. Well, guess what? I'm not really being with my kids because I'm sitting here behind the computer editing all the time.
Gotcha.
So that was like that realization of like, what is my priority here? What do I want to be doing with my time? And that was where I got a couple contractors right off the bat and started kind of feeling out like what they are best fit for in the process of all the things that we do. For example, there are a couple people with me where we tried them in certain roles to do certain, just say like blogs or social media graphics or whatever it is. And I wasn't quite happy with what I was getting. And so I would shift them and say, hey, would you like to try this instead? And we have found a good fit. And now we are just happy as can be.
wow.
All of us. So I've tried to be like, I like this person. They care. They're here every day. They communicate well. What can we do? Like, where can they
Mhm.
fit? So as I grew my team, that was the strategy, really. And then the business owner mindset shift has really been within the past, I'd say even 6 months. I noticed the difference, or what I felt was the difference between, let's say, like Alex Sanfilippo and me, right? He is involved in the podcast space, but he's very much the owner of these different pieces of software, of these different things. And he's on stage often presenting as a business owner.
Mhm.
He's not announcing himself as like the guest connector, right? So I started to kind of take those notes and think, okay, what are we doing differently? How do I actually like step into that space as a business owner? And it, for me, all goes back to the original goal of to be with my family more often. And I'm still pretty hands-on. I'm not necessarily editing. It's like I said, I'm doing more quality control and coordinating, but there are still plenty of times where I'm in Canva making graphics and writing some show notes over
Yeah.
here. And there's just a lot of things going on. And I'm trying, and I told my online business manager too, I was like, if you catch me like messing with somebody else's tasks, tell me, because it's so natural to go, oh, I'll just do this really fast. But that really fast, maybe it's 10 minutes, maybe it's an hour. But as a business owner, I've got to think about like, what could I have done for my business to get a new client in that hour?
Yeah.
I could have been on a call with them, right? Or I could have been messaging someone. I could be following up. I could be doing all these other things that will grow my business instead of being hands-on in the nitty-gritty. a book that I've really enjoyed lately that's helping me with the messaging is by Donald Miller. He's the guy that got famous for StoryBrand. And his next book that he's created is called How to Grow Your Small Business. Really simple, really easy. I posted about it on Instagram, or I think that post is coming up. I created the post the other day. But I would say dive into that. I got the audiobook. It comes with like a free downloadable workbook, and I've been going through that like it's my homework. And
Nice.
that's been really helping me think about what does the business look like? What is the language I use? What is the marketing budget? Like all of these things that we've kind of touched on, I'm pulling from that book. And I think it'll be helpful for anybody, even if you are looking for that first client or not really ready to step out into the business owner space, but you're wanting to be a podcast editor or a podcast manager. I think it'll still help.
Cool.
Yeah, that's great. And for those watching, I did drop that in the chat. I found the link on Amazon. It's a free link. It's not an affiliate link. You can just use it and know that you're not giving us any of your hard-earned money.
Yeah.
But yeah, I haven't read that one yet, but it sounds great. I did want to hit Steven's comment. He's talking. I think this is talking about expenses, getting into work that requires a computer upgrade. So he's coming up on his upgrade.
Yeah.
Usually tries to hold on for 7 years. Going to have to probably do it at 6. Actually, 7 years is pretty aspirational, I think. I think the best I've ever managed to do is 5 for a work computer, which I think you're doing great if you can do that. Definitely get that you have to eat. Yeah.
Absolutely.
I'm with you. I like eating too, unfortunately.
Yeah. Well,
go ahead.
and maybe sometimes the thought process there is, can I get a new client that would cover the payment that I might have to make on this new computer? Like if I have to finance it, and let's say it's gonna be $200 a month or whatever it is, I don't know if that's an option for you. Can we get a client or 2, right? Just to be safe, just in case the one drops off, to
Right.
so that income covers that new computer. Like what can we do to be crafty there? Sometimes we got to make those choices.
Yeah, I'll be honest. That always scares me. The idea of taking on the risk before I have the client just, yeah, bugs me.
I'm just saying in a pinch, like that might be.
And apparently he did get the client. So
Yeah.
Congratulations. That's great.
Awesome.
Anything else before we go to the Poddex question of the day? All right, Virginia, you're the guest, so you get to pick a number between 1 and 5. We actually have real cards. We're not just making up these questions.
Okay, 3.
1, 2. Everybody picks 3 almost.
It's like the middle, but not the middle between 1 and
evil.
5.
This is evil.
Oh no.
So the question, I think I may I'm sorry, I can't do
you
this
don't like
one.
It? Okay.
Yeah. How about between 1 and 4? Sorry.
2.
2. What is your favorite gadget?
Ooh.
So I'll go. Of course,
I'm like looking around my desk because I'm like, well, this is all my gadgets.
So I'll go with something that's new that I picked up that's been a little bit helpful for me as an editor. I've been using a programmable mouse for a while, but I recently got a Loop Deck. It's sort of like a Stream Deck type thing, but it's specifically for doing macros. And so I use that. I've programmed in the cut and the split and the duck and all that stuff. So it's just a 1 key command for me when I'm editing. Yeah. And that's been really helpful. So that's my new gadget that I like. Who's next?
I'll go now. I just got the programmable mouse yesterday. So
nice.
Yeah, finally. I'm like, took me long enough. I'm like, you know what? I wonder what happened. And now I posted that in the Podcast Editors Club, and then people are posting these 12-button programmable things. I'm like, well, I need to get that instead. But I mean, as far as other gadgets go, in thinking podcasting world, I do like my PodTrack P4
nice.
that I take out. I just have use it with one client, but he's kind of a high profile guy in our community, and we just meet at my church parlor, and he records his voiceovers that he does for special projects, and of course, the brilliant one over here has forgotten extra batteries before, forgot the memory card before, whatever. They, but I do like that portability, and I encourage my clients who are going to do remote stuff or on location stuff or whatever to get one too.
Mhm.
I love that thing.
Mhm. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, so I can't remember the name of these speakers, so I might have to get back to everybody. But I do have a set of speakers on my desk because I do get really, I guess it's ear fatigue. I get really tired of being plugged in. So anytime my husband works in the office with me, so anytime he's not here, I like unplug and
Yeah.
Nice.
I will, because yeah, so I did pick out specific speakers. They're not like Bose or anything with the deep bass. I was really careful about the specifics when I purchased them, but they have really helped when I can just check some audio, watch a video. I can hop in the academy and listen to something without being plugged in, and that's kind of been one of my favorite like reliefs as far as editing. They sound great and they have a nice even sound. You can still hear
Yes.
like little ticks and little things. They're not too full of bass. They're not for music. They are for dialogue. So I'll share what they are. I'll
Yeah,
have to look up
please.
what they
That'd be great because I switched over to speakers a couple of years ago because I noticed that when I was editing for too long, I would stop and my ears would be ringing, which is a precursor for problems. And at my age, you sort of have to be careful about that because I listened to too much rock and roll when I was 20, and I want to be able to hear when I'm 80. That's
Yes.
just kind of my thing.
Well, and
Uh,
I have a really tiny head. So any of the over ear over they actually press down on my earlobes even at the tightest setting. So I found inner ear. I think these are Shure something or another
mhm.
for monitoring, but then I also needed that extra option. So maybe the advice there is see if you can vary your workspace a little bit, vary your tools so you don't get fatigued.
Yeah. Yeah, Stephen mentions that even speakers can be harsh depending on the room. Absolutely. And
Mhm.
Steve actually commented about the changing stuff. He loves his adjustable standing desk.
Yes.
I would say that's a gadget. It's just not a small gadget, Steve. We can
Yeah.
claim that.
Yeah, for sure.
Um, let's see. Anything else before we go? I think we're good. Jennifer, if somebody wants to be a guest and they want to share the story of their first client, because we would love to hear from you, Jennifer, what would they need to do?
They would need to go to our website, podcasteditormastermind.com, and click on Be a Guest, or you can message us through the Facebook group. We'd get it that way too, right? Or
Yep.
email
Yeah.
info@podcasteditorsmastermind.com.
Wow, you went through that very fast. It's like you've been practicing. That's amazing. Thank you. So, I guess first off, Virginia, thank you for joining us. For those that
Yeah.
joined us live in the audience, we're really glad that you're here.
Thank
And
you.
Virginia, I appreciate you sharing your perspective. I was not kidding when I did the introduction. I really do appreciate you, and
Oh,
I think you're doing some great stuff.
That's
As we go, I'm Brian Ensminger. You can find me at toptieraudio.com, and above me on this side is,
Jennifer Longworth, and you can find me at bourbonbarrelpodcasting.com.
and Virginia, where should people find you?
I'm at podcastabundance.com, or my favorite platform is Instagram. So I'm at Podcast Abundance.
See, that's the question I was supposed to ask in the green room. Which social profile did you want to do? So I just covered for myself, and then I just gave it all out. So everybody knows Brian doesn't know what he's doing. Unable to join us tonight were Jennifer.
I made it. I just barely made it, but he made it.
Unable to join us were Carrie Caulfield, who you can find at carrie.land, and Daniel Abendroth, who you can find at rothmedia.audio. If you joined us live, thank you for being here. If you cut the replay, you got the cleaned up version. So we're glad that you were here as well. And we hope to see you soon. Jennifer, thank you again.
And Virginia, thank you too.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. I appreciate this.
That's great. I'm going to go now. Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Bye.